I don't know. I wouldn't talk to Theo Vaughn or I wouldn't talk to Joe Rogan. I don't need to.
Would you not talk to them just because of their politics, or have you heard things about them that you like, I don't like this guy?
Truth is, like, I don't respect them, and especially if I don't respect their stand-up comedy, then I go, well, what do I even care? I certainly don't respect you as a piercing journalist. So if I don't even like your stand-up, then whatever.
Yeah,
you're not a peer.
Stand-up is a taste thing. So anyone who doesn't like stand-up,
I can respect someone who I hate if they're a great comic. I believe in the integrity of my comedic taste.
but do you not respect Rogan and Theo, at least for like Theo gave a funny Trump interview. Like, he gave the most different Trump interview that anyone has done, and he was totally himself.
And he's a good interviewer. He's an entertaining personality. I just don't think Trump's a good force to America. I think it's hurt culture. I think it's hurt people. I think it hurts queer people. People get mistreated. And so I just don't like the cozying up. I think we've become way too cozy with politicians.
So Jim Norton has a podcast I've never really been interested in checking out, but I found an episode worth watching as he had on Gianmarco Soresi, who relentlessly attacked Joe Rogan, and I am always here for that, especially when the Joe Rogan hate is accurate and being said right to one of Joe's really close friends' faces. I'm not a big fan of Gianmarco's stand-up, but he's one of the few mainstream comedians who seems to genuinely say what he thinks on podcasts regardless of career pushback or political affiliation. And I respect him for that tremendously. It was fun watching Jim Norton squirm over the truth bombs Gianmarco kept dropping about Joe, and Jim is such a Joe Rogan dicksucker that he couldn't help but make excuses and bend over backwards to defend Joe the whole interview. Take a look.
Solution to it. And then, like, I don't know. I wouldn't talk to Theo Vaughn or I wouldn't talk to Joe Rogan. I don't need to.
Would you not talk to them just because of their politics, or have you heard things about them that you like, I don't like this guy?
No, it's not necessarily even wouldn't talk to them, but I mean, like, the truth is, like, I don't respect them, and especially if I don't respect their stand-up comedy, then I go, well, what do I even care? I certainly don't respect you as a piercing journalist. So if I don't even like your stand-up, then whatever.
Yeah,
you're not a peer.
Stand-up is a taste thing. So anyone who doesn't like stand-up, but do you not
taste the thing? But I respect. I can respect someone who I hate if they're a great comic. I believe in the integrity of my comedic taste.
But do you not respect Rogan and Theo, at least for like Theo gave a funny Trump interview. Like, he gave the most different Trump interview that anyone has done, and he was totally himself in the interview.
That's fine. He's a good interviewer. He's an entertaining personality. I just don't think Trump's a good force to America. I think it's hurt culture. I think it's hurt people. I think it hurts queer people. It's people get mistreated. And so I just don't like the cozying up. I think we've become way too cozy with politicians.
First off, mad props to Gianmarco for straight up calling out Joe Rogan for not being a good stand-up comedian. Because Joe isn't good, he hasn't ever been, and it's awkward to watch people like Shane Gillis pretend that Joe is funny. It requires so much cognitive dissonance to pretend Joe is good, yet all these comics still lie through their teeth for him. Joe not being funny has been the elephant in the room for years for me that no one will acknowledge, and it feels so good to hear someone say it out in the open, in a room with a very good friend of Joe's finally. Jim Norton was a pussy, of course, for Daddy Rogan and tried defending him against Gianmarco's attacks, proving he also can't be honest when it comes to Papa Rogan. To add insult to injury, I love that Gianmarco also made it clear that he didn't respect Joe Rogan. It's a critical point against all these MAGA bros because that's what this all boils down to. The reason smart people don't like Joe Rogan anymore is because we see that we can no longer trust him, and his actions over the last few years have proven he is not of good character. And Gianmarco knows that and is clear about it, even though Jim tries to frame things in a more pleasant way for Joe's sake. Take a look.
If we want to maintain that badge of being a comedian, I think politicians should be like, I don't know if I want to do the comedy podcast. And I think it's become needs to be a recalibration in this country.
I don't know. I think here's what I like about it. I hate the media so much. I like that they've lost a lot of their ability to control what people are thinking. Like, I love Joe, and I've seen plenty of things he said that I'm like, nah, that's not how I feel. And I've seen plenty of things he said, I go, yeah, that makes sense to me. So it's a kind of an issue by issue thing. I'll agree or not agree. But I think that having that choice is really good. And you look at the media, and they've kind of come off as these arbiters of what's true and what's not true.
Yeah.
And that's where they became hateable. So anything that is really ruining their ability to do that makes me happy.
But the thing is, like, is it ruining their ability, or is it just shifting to a different paradigm? Because it's like you got Barry Weiss and you got, 3 billionaires in charge of now all the media organizations. There's a new movie about Sam Altman, the AI guy, that Amazon no longer wants to acquire because AI invested into them. So they got them. They got Barry Weiss, who's practically owned by the Ellisons and whatever. And now Joe Rogan keeps having on people that are more sympathetic to that worldview. So it's not that they're necessarily fracturing a belief in a media system. It's creating like a kind of more skewed new version that everyone's listening to.
Rogan did ask Kamala, and he offered her any time.
That's fine.
She turned it down.
That's fine, but he's having on like the Sam Altmans and the Mark Zuckerbergs and some billionaire people and the Elon Musks that I'm like, this is not shaking up the paradigm. This is bolstering the richest people there is.
But they're also interesting people.
I've watched a lot of Jim Norton over the years, and I have respected a lot of things he said and agreed with a lot of it. But when it comes to Joe Rogan, Jim just can't be honest. He has known Joe his whole adult life, and he understandably has a cognitive bias about him. That's okay, but it does prevent Jim and Gianmarco from having a real debate. Gianmarco repeatedly tries to be clear with his message and point of view about Joe Rogan being dangerous, basically. And each time he does, Jim tries to reframe his thoughts to be less critical of Joe Rogan. He doesn't seem to understand that, whether he likes it or not, Joe Rogan is the media now. He was bought and paid for my Spotify many years ago, and he's sold out to Trump too. When was the last time Joe Rogan had a non-politicized guest on his show? He's a corporate shill, part of the oligarchy now, and his last 100 MAGA-coded guests on the Joe Rogan Experience prove that. Jim is living in a fantasy land with the classic Austin talking points about free speech and free media, yet Joe Rogan and all his friends have sold out to Spotify and Netflix and are now fully corporate and controlled. Where is this free, anti-regular media bubble Jim is talking about? It sure doesn't look like they can say anything. In fact, they never say anything at all anymore, unless it's part of the MAGA agenda. Jim tried claiming that Joe isn't MAGA-coded basically by saying that he invited Kamala Harris on his podcast 1,000,000 years ago. Like as if that makes up for the fact that Joe has had on his podcast nothing but despicable MAGA propagandists for the last several years straight. Get a clue, Jim. Joe is not just some guy anymore. He was bought and paid for, and his guest list reflects that. Every single episode. Arguing that Joe is still just the everyman curious about the world is laughably out of touch in today's climate. He hasn't had a new guest on his show with an honest point of view since 2020. Fight me in the comments if you disagree, but when people are lying shills, it's hard to be curious because they have nothing to say. As Gianmarco points out, the kinds of guests Joe Rogan is promoting on his show nowadays are not moving the needle. And isn't that supposed to be the goal with what Jim thinks is free media? New media is about fighting truth to power, not being manipulated into giving power more power, like Joe Rogan has done. Joe got lost along the way to truth because he's not smart and was an easy target for manipulation. He became the perfect patsy for these evil, vile politicians to trick, and all they had to was employ one tactic. The halo effect. Joe Rogan believes that these evil people are all not evil because they are nice to him personally. This is the basis of stupidity. It's also the basis for his own cognitive bias because Joe has spent time with Trump, for example, and Trump was nice to him. Joe mistakenly believes that means Trump must not be guilty of bad things. But this isn't how reality works. It's how manipulation works. Gianmarco was firm on his stances throughout their whole talk about Joe Rogan being a net negative for culture pretty much, and I couldn't agree more. Joe Rogan went from being this free thinker to a patsy to an active participant now in propaganda that is affecting the whole world. He is no longer just an innocent bystander. Joe needs to and should be held to account for who he platforms on his channel, and I am glad that someone is trying to force him to be accountable as Jim Norton clearly thinks it's fine for Joe to have no responsibility. Take a look.
Interesting people to hear talk. Like when we all have a choice when we hear somebody talk. Do I believe this or do I not believe this? And I don't think for other people. So if Kamala had done his show, maybe I would have liked her more. Maybe I wouldn't have liked her more.
Yeah.
But it doesn't convince me usually either way. I've usually come to my conclusion a few different sources. And the difference, just to answer your question about the media operated under the kind of umbrella of getting of being telling the truth and of having the motives of truth, whereas they were not being honest about being the entertainment and ratings driven thing.
educate Joe Rogan is. All I know is that there's not a degree. Why if he really loves a thing, go to school for it.
But I don't think you need to do that just to have a conversation about it. He's
For
not
sure.
he's literally.
It's a lot of conversations about it.
But that's what his job is. Like,
what's his job?
To talk and to be entertaining.
Sure.
He's a comedian and he has a podcast, and that really is all it is. And he's just doing his job.
There's a lot of conjectures. You won't see me if I went on every single podcast and every conversation I had was about like you should get the vaccine. I should probably do more research about it.
But he probably did do the research. I have to say that. Like,
Sure.
and by the way, and I'm vaccinated, so I didn't take his advice on that. I can listen to Joe say something, and I agree with that, or I don't agree with that. But I don't put anybody in the position of saying like, well, I know the difference, but other people wouldn't.
But when is this entertainment? Because now it feels like we're talking about news. Now it feels like we're just talking about news. And then I go back to like, okay, well, news should have higher standards than entertainment.
But that obviously is entertainment because people are listening to it. Like, there really is something to be said that when millions of people are going to something and listening to it, there is an entertaining factor to it. If all of a sudden people are like, wow, that's a guy who I like what he says. I like listening to this guy talk. And I've found enough inconsistency in the way the media reports things to not trust them anymore. Maybe people trust him more because he's willing to have people on he doesn't like.
Sure, a lot of people listen to the Pope, and I don't necessarily agree that I should follow his scientific beliefs. I think people go to the thing that they like and then they follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't have to. 100% agree.
course.
You do not have to follow anybody's scientific beliefs. But that's all it is somebody giving an opinion on scientific beliefs. You can follow it. You cannot follow it. There's nothing wrong with that.
But if you found out that millions of people were listening to you about your scientific views, do you think that maybe you might be more careful before you expressed, I don't know, a view you saw on some article you saw in the New York Post that day?
If they were listening to me because they knew I was coming from an honest place of saying this is what I think, then I would continue to do what I was doing that got them listening to me in the first place. I think that if all of a sudden 1 million people are listening to me and they know that I'm just kind of giving an opinion on something I've seen or something I've experienced or something I've looked into, then I'm obligated just to keep doing the same thing and let them come to their own conclusions.
Sure. I think you could. I'm just saying you don't. I just think part of this is not necessarily that I think what they're doing is inherently wrong. You can talk about whatever shit you want. It's just so many people listen that I think it changes the context of what you're doing. It's the same like Spider-Man quote of great power, great responsibility. It's just like, if you do look out one day and a bunch of people are taking your advice, I'm going to go, well, I'm going to be a lot more careful when I give something as serious as what vaccinations your child should take.
But there are, yes, of course. But there are people who would listen to this and say, yeah, but look at all of the people that are coming to the conclusion you're saying, but on the opposite side of it, that are going, this guy's saying exactly what I think is right, and this guy is giving exactly the, I don't even want to say advice.
I just want to encourage people not to go to this for that advice. That's all. The same way I wouldn't want them to go to a priest for advice on to deal with their alcoholism if the priest is going to talk about, spirits and devil and don't masturbate. Like, I just think it's again, I don't really care about the person. It's more about look at society. Why are you going to this for this? If my dad was getting a heart surgery and said he was listening to Joe Rogan about what to prep for the surgery, I go, please, Father, please go to the doctor.
But I think with anything like that, we have to assume that the responsibility is on them to do that. Of course, I would always.
It is. Unfortunately, with vaccines, it's like their actions affect people. I wish everything were that easy. I wish it were.
But it is. People just choose differently. Like I listen to Joe, and I listen to a lot of people. And I went to talk to my doctor and talked to another doctor and decided to get the vaccine. I was able to.
Those are the three people. So you went three. Those are your three.
No, I'm saying I heard many different people talking about it. I'm saying I did hear what Rogan said.
Yeah.
I didn't go to him first and go, well, let's see. I just heard what he said. But it didn't. Sometimes it would affect the way you make a decision. Sometimes it wouldn't affect the way you make a decision. So I give everybody that credit. I went to my doctor and I went to another doctor I knew and I listened to what they said.
Yeah.
So anybody who is not doing that fucking person has to speak and answer for themselves. It's not my job to think for them and go, well, the person they're listening to is bad.
While I understand that adult people should be responsible for themselves and should be able to decipher what information to absorb and what not to, they aren't able to. And this keeps being proven by the idiotic things people do from the advice they've received from watching the Joe Rogan Experience. People are literally too dumb to be trusted to not misunderstand Joe. And that's just a reality. Just because people should be able to do something when they don't, whose responsibility does it then become? I think Gianmarco understands that because some people don't have the capacity to comprehend Joe. Joe should be taking active steps to protect those idiots from themselves. Whether it's his responsibility or not, if Joe's a caring, empathetic person, he should want to ensure people get the right information because Joe's intentions are irrelevant when the harm he's doing is still real. All in all, I like this conversation between Gianmarco and Jim Norton, even though I felt like Jim was just doing damage control the whole time for Joe Rogan. Gianmarco made really good and important points about the harm Joe Rogan is doing to the general public, and I appreciated how direct he was. He didn't cower like most people do when the topic of Joe Rogan comes up, and he held Joe to account for his words. Because it's a cop-out to say that it's not his responsibility when you consider the impact he's having. Regardless of what Joe's intentions are, he has a duty of care to his listeners in the same way that traditional media has to their listeners. What do you think? Should Joe Rogan be held to the same standard as the old media, considering how much greater his reach is? And do you think there should be more guardrails in place to protect stupid people from falling for propagandists Joe Rogan hosts on his podcast? Let me know, and thank you so much for watching.